Radio 103.9 FM. Coming up at 11:15 is another Inspiring God and Our Dogs program with Meg Greer. But time now for Ceasefire with Dale Adams and Ron Cisneros. The following is sponsored by the Boerne Bookshop, and this is Boerne Radio.
Welcome to Ceasefire, where civics meets civility and engagement meets empowerment. Ceasefire is hosted by former Boerne ISD trustee and owner of the Boerne Bookshop, Dale Adams, and by former Boerne City Council member and local insurance agent, Ron Cisneros.
Good morning. Welcome to Ceasefire. My name is Dale Adams.
And I'm Ron Cisneros.
And welcome to our show. We are talking today about who should feed the poor.
That's right.
Now, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the title for starters. But why don't you get us started on what this is about?
Okay. We talked a while back about our different show topics, and I think you actually came up with this question. You might not recall it, but what we were trying to figure out, who ultimately is responsible. And I think most people on the left tend to look to government. Like the government should feed the poor. Most people on the right tend to look to charities to do that. I think there's a real problem with both of them. And I think the answer is actually very simple and very uncomfortable. And so we're going to start off with a little exercise. I want everybody listening right now to imagine that you are standing in your home in a hallway where you have a mirror. And I want you to look into that mirror, and there's the answer, and we can now conclude the show. Lexi, thank you for showing up today. It's been a great show. We will see you all next week. We're done. How about that?
Okay. So you're saying I'm responsible for everybody?
Well, no. You bear some responsibility. I bear some responsibility. Lexi bears some responsibility. And I think we commit a grievous sin when we look to the government or we look to charities and don't involve ourselves in that process. And I'm not a big fan of getting the government involved, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But even if you are saying the government should be involved, if you're an advocate of that, but you yourself are not playing a role in helping the government through that process,
okay,
you're not engaged.
True.
You don't want to solve the problem. You want somebody else to solve the problem.
That's good points. Good points. I want to go back a little bit to the question first of who should feed the poor, because when I saw that on the roster there, I thought, okay, I don't really like the question.
Okay.
Because the question implies two different level of people: the people who feed other people and the people who receive the feeding. And I think it subconsciously, I think it sets up a caste kind of comparison between those who need feeding and those who do the feeding.
Okay.
So I guess what I'm saying is I don't like the question. I don't like the way it implies that there are those that are receiving and those that are giving, because I think everybody should be part of the giving, including the poor or whoever we're talking about. And I think we all receive benefits from the rest of society. And so I think I think the nuances are a lot deeper than just us and them. And I'm not sure exactly what the solution to that is and how to better phrase the topic, but it might be more along the lines of, the way I'd like to see it is, how can we help people feed themselves? So do you believe somebody once said, if you give a man fish, he'll eat for a day. If you teach him to fish, he'll eat for the rest of his life?
That's correct.
And I would rather see us helping people feed themselves rather than providing food or doing things that help get food to people. I'd rather see doing things that help people get food for themselves, if we're talking about food.
Yeah. I like the way you sum that up there, because for a little while, when you started off, I thought, oh my gosh, we're going to get into an ethics course. And so I don't want to start talking ethics, but no, we probably should. But I do like the way you wrapped that up, and that is a great point. Ultimately, and I guess here I am diving into ethics, I think we all bear, and I think you're saying the same thing, a responsibility to feed, to clothe, to provide that humanity to others, to our fellow citizens.
Or to provide an environment in which they can feed themselves and clothe themselves. So I think we all play a part in a society, and a society offers opportunities for us to feed ourselves. Without our society, there's no stores, there's no farm-to-market system. The society is the environment, the ecology of how it all fits together. And what I want that ecology to function so that anybody can go out there and get the food. Not that I'm taking it to them, but they're getting it themselves. And I think that's the key distinction.
And I think this is great. I'm glad you brought this up because this actually...
I know I'm in the weeds here a little bit.
No, I don't think so at all, because you're actually touching on some of the topics that I want to talk about and why ultimately I think government is just an absolute, I shouldn't say an absolute, but fails to produce the results that we want when we talk about feeding the poor. Yeah. One of the things that I thought about when I was coming over here today was that I was going to share a stat with you about the number of poor people in the United States, and that's defined by the census, census.gov. It's defined by people living below the poverty line. In 1970, that was 13.3% of all Americans, okay? In 2023, it's 11.1%. So now we're talking of a span of a little more than 50 years, and we've brought it down a couple percentage points. That's not really great.
Did you look at what the stat was, say, 100 years ago?
I didn't.
Okay, you would have found it was much, much higher. And if you look at the trend, it comes down pretty rapidly until the mid-60s, and then it pretty much flatlines.
Yeah.
And which coincides a lot with when government decided to take over providing food for the poor and other things.
Yeah, and that's actually where I was going to go with that. To have 50 years and only bring that percentage down by 2 points, man, that's not a good number.
Yeah.
But like I said, on the way over here, I'm thinking about those numbers, and then I thought, wait a second, you can read the Bible, and there are all kinds of verses about feeding the poor, which means that they had poor people 2,000 years ago, right? Yeah. So ultimately, there's going to be that point where you can't, and I got in trouble for saying this once, but you're not going to be able to solve the problem completely here on earth. In the next kingdom, yes, not on this one.
But what you just said, there's some semantics involved in that. When you talk about the poor, it's important to know what that means. Because a poor person today in America is not the same as a poor person 500 years ago in Ethiopia or even in England. What we call poor would have been called rich and wealthy 1,000 years ago. And if you're defining poor, which is, and the government does this, as the lowest portion of income of people, you're never going to lose that because there's always going to be somebody at the bottom of the totem pole. And no matter how big the totem pole gets or how wealthy it is or how much it's coated in gold and has AC and a phone for everybody, there's always going to be somebody there. So, of course, it can't be solved simply because there's always differences, incomes, no matter how much you try.
Yeah, and certainly there have been governments that have been formed to erase those differences in income. And what you find is that the people that operate those governments somehow rise to the top of the income levels and their citizens become the bottom. So that doesn't work either.
No, and I think even the effort to try is misguided because we are social creatures, and social creatures compare themselves. And that is so innate into us that there will always be comparisons. And once there's comparisons, there's rankings. And however meaningless those rankings might be, they will exist based on whatever. And so you're never going to get rid of any kind of ranking of people. And that's just the way it is. It's human nature.
So touching on some of those numbers again and talking about the inefficiency of government to solve the problem, I want to share another number with you. And this also goes back, this one actually goes back to 1969, a year before my previous number, or year. And this has to do with school lunches. Back in the 60s, there was this big movement towards ending hunger in America and malnutrition and whatnot. And believe it or not, Richard Nixon played a big role in that too. So it wasn't just a Democratic thing, it was a Republican thing too. Everybody jumped on that bandwagon. But in 1969, the share of school lunches provided for free or at reduced price was at 15%. It's 1969. In 2024, that number is 72%.
Yeah.
Now, how can we reduce poverty? We've reduced poverty in the United States by 2%, but we have this enormous growth. I don't even know what that percentage is. We've gone from 15% to 72% in free lunches.
Yeah. Because when you start handing things out, everybody wants some.
Right.
And this programs are meant to grow. Government programs are meant to grow. And if people became wealthy, then they wouldn't grow. So they just redefine it. Yeah.
So if we took government out of the equation, would people step up and say, okay, we've got to do something about the people in the Boerne Independent School District or Comfort ISD or Blanco ISD? We got to do something about those kids that don't have enough food to eat.
I definitely think people would step up, whether it's charities or individuals or somebody would step up, because Americans always step up. We are the most giving society in history, as far as I know. It's incredible. And I think part of that comes from the fact that we believe that citizens take care of each other, governments don't. And people complain about our government because it doesn't do as much for its people as, say, the health system in England, which is nationalized and supposedly takes care of everybody. And people lambaste that we have a private healthcare system for the most part. But Americans give more to, individually, give more to other nations, to the poor, than anybody else in the world. And that comes from our belief in helping our fellow citizens and humans. And so I definitely think somebody will set up. In fact, in Boerne, we have the Blessings in a Backpack program,
I was just about to say.
Which is a privately funded program for providing food to children and low-income families.
Yeah, and
so it does exist already.
And they step in where the free lunch program ends, which is basically that program ends during the school day and during the school year. And so they've come in and taken the next step, which I think is great.
Right.
Here's another number that I think is alarming. In 1970, the obesity rate for children was 5%. Today, in 2023, it's 21%. Now, we're feeding more kids than we've ever done before. We're saying that there's still a hunger problem, but the obesity rate is up. And I'm not trying to be a skeptic, not trying to be anti-feeding children. That's not the message here. The message is that...
I'll do that.
I'll let you do that. Now, no, the message is that government is not the right institution. It's the incorrect social institution to take care of this problem.
Absolutely.
It's not the best place to do it. And you mentioned Blessings in a Backpack, and that's a local community that's addressing local concerns. I think we're better off with groups like them addressing the issue than we are with the federal government stepping in and providing free lunches in Kendall County.
Absolutely, because people at the local level are in touch with people who need, regardless of what that need is. The people in your local community are more aware of it than somebody far away. And a lot of people like having large national organizations run things because those national organizations have a big impact. They can do big things. The problem is it can't address the problem because they're doing things in a big way rather than a local individual way. We have so many charities and non-governmental nonprofits here in Kendall County, and they all address different small things. We have a pregnancy care center. We have a women's shelter. We have the Blessings of the Backpack. All these different small organizations that take care of different needs, and they're all in touch with the local needs. And you can't address those issues from far away. You've got to be on the ground, and that is why these local groups are the ones that are effective.
It looks like we are up for a break.
Okay, thank you for listening to Ceasefire. We're going to take a quick break here with Dale and Ron. We'll be right back. Boerne has its own bookshop. In fact, it's called the Boerne Bookshop. Hi, I'm Dale Adams, inviting you to get lost. Get lost in a good book in our relaxed and casual atmosphere. We have a wide and eclectic selection in the Boerne Bookshop, and we pride ourselves on finding what you are looking for. We do author meet and greets, host writing workshops, and can connect you with a good book club. And your young ones will absolutely love our kids section at the Boerne Bookshop. And while we want you to get lost, we're easy to find, as we're in the heart of Boerne at the back of the Richter Tavern building. We are the Boerne Bookshop. Welcome back to Ceasefire with Dale and Ron. Today we're talking about who's going to feed the poor. And it's actually more of a broader conversation about helping those in need. And we have a book, naturally, at the Boerne Bookshop, and it's called When Helping Hurts, How to Alleviate Poverty Without Hurting the Poor and Yourself by Steve Corbett and Brian Fickert. And it's almost a manual on how to help people without causing more problems. It's from a Christian perspective, and it starts off with some things that Jesus talks about, but then it really gets into the nuts and bolts of strategies and what you can do if you want to do something to really help those in need. And those in need is not just people who don't have the money to buy food or housing. We have national disasters, and suddenly people are in dire need for just about everything. I lived in southern Mississippi when Katrina hit, and one of the things that just amazed me was that after it hit, we had massive convoys of these cherry pickers, these electrical workers, coming from all over the country, just down to the impacted area. And all over the country, these people were coming in to help rebuild southern Mississippi, and it was just amazing to see. Home Depot had half their store ripped off, or physically ripped off. And they put a massive set of tarps over the corner of their store, and they opened up, and they brought in pallets and pallets of water. And all these people, and these weren't government. These were individuals and corporations coming in and helping people. And I think it's amazing how much people will step up when they know there's a need, a true need. And defining that need is part of the confusion, I think, a lot with poverty.
Yeah. Dale, you were talking earlier about empowering people to feed themselves. I want to go back to that and talk about that a little more because I want to get some ideas from you on how we can do that. But before we jump back into that, I think when we look to the government, it might be, in some cases, a case of helplessness on our own part. Like, my gosh, I'm just like one person. What can I do? Uncle Sam should help. But what I've seen, especially as a former elected official, sometimes government gets in the way of its own best intentions. They create policies that exacerbate the problem, not solve them. And I'll cite, for example, local land use regulations and planning and zoning codes. We have those in place because we don't want an auto dealership next to a neighborhood, perhaps, or a liquor store next to a church. That makes sense. But sometimes we get so hung up on the beautification projects and whatnot that we make housing more expensive. Yeah. And in doing so, we make the homelessness problem larger. Yeah. We make homes less affordable, make it difficult for people to stay in homes, either renting them or buying them. We create communities that, man, they look great from the outside and people want to visit them, but the people that work in them are struggling. Yeah. And I see the same thing with the hunger issue. It's like the government wants to solve the hunger issue, but the government, through a lot of its own policies, makes food more expensive. It makes food less nutritious. So what can we do to empower people to afford their own food? Oh, man. Tough question. I know.
It is a tough question. That's a question everybody wants the answer to. Hire them. Yeah. If you want people to feed themselves, give them a paycheck. Right. Or not give them a paycheck. Provide them an opportunity to earn a paycheck. Somebody that earns their income, there's a whole self-worth spiritual side of it that gives meaning to their lives that they don't have when they're stuck in a welfare whirlpool. But we have so many opportunities for people to do stuff. So I have a little bit of land. Sometimes I get cedar cut, and I'll go out and say, anybody want to cut cedar? Yeah. I've had some people come out and look at us and go, no, that's okay. But if we have opportunities for people to make the money to buy their food, or if they have their home or something like that, you could help them to grow a garden or something like that if you want to go to that level. But honestly, in our society, everything revolves around a paycheck. Right. And if people can get a paycheck, then that's going to solve the problem. The key is it a good paycheck? That's part of it. And that, I actually lay that at the feet of our educational system that needs to be ensuring that our kids are developing skills and work ethics that will promote success in their lives and prosperity.
Yeah.
So if you want to find a solution, in my mind, the solution to poverty is get people working.
Yeah.
Now,
see, I totally agree. I even brought up a statistic for you.
Uh-oh.
So from 2017 to 2019 period, an average of 38% of able-bodied adults receiving food stamps were employed. Only 38% of them, while 62% were not working at all.
Wow.
yeah.
So you're giving the free handouts to people who are not even trying.
But see, that's where the government program undermined its own goals, because they set up these programs to give money to people, and they say, if you're working, you can't get it. And so people are like, oh, I'm not going to work because I can't make more than I'm getting from the government. And because they don't work, they can't develop their work history, their skill levels, their talents to the point where they will make more than
Correct.
what they get from the
They're
handout.
disincentivized.
They're disincentivized, and it's frustrating. I know it's frustrating for everybody, because I know the people that are caught in that, they're trying to make a decision on how best to take care of themselves and their family, and yet for the long run, it's not the best decision, but the government's trying to force them into that.
I think culturally, too, we've come to a point in the United States where you're not as reliant on your family unit anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So young people have children, and they go in now I'm forgetting the program that provides the milk. WIC, thank you. And so they're able to get these groceries, and I'm not anti-WIC by any stretch of the imagination.
Do you want to know what the number one product WIC is used for?
Tell me.
Sodas.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the obesity problem.
Yeah.
Yep.
And but what happened 50 years ago before WIC? What would a 21-year-old impoverished, newly minted mother have done? She probably would have gone to her mom and her grandmother, and they would have provided milk, bread, eggs, butter, those sorts of things. They would have helped in raising the grandbaby or the great-grandbaby, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't happen as much anymore in our culture. And I'm saying that because it's not, I don't want to lump everything against the government. There's certainly a lot that can be put at its feet, but I think culturally, too, we're not looking in that mirror and saying, oh, my gosh, it's my responsibility.
Yeah. You are your brother's keeper. You have to take care of your family. And I see a lot of people that don't.
Yeah.
And I have several family members that I spend time taking care of in one capacity or another.
Uh-huh.
And it is tough, but that's our duty. That's what you're supposed to do as a human being, is take care of people, and especially the people that are close to you.
I don't know why, but when you said that about all these people that you're responsible for, I thought about all the people that hang out in your bookstore on Friday night.
No, they all feed themselves, I think.
Thank you for opening your doors for us and giving us a place to hang out.
That's part of community, and that's
Right.
my social life.
Yeah. Mine too.
I think we need to wrap up with a solution, though.
Okay.
Are we going to have a solution today? This is a perennial problem, so there probably isn't ever a solution.
I think, like I said earlier, I don't think there's a permanent solution. And as you pointed out, there's always going to be this ranking. There's going to be somebody at the bottom of the totem pole. Yeah. I think objectively, we should have, in the United States, as prosperous as we are, we should have a minimum threshold of acceptance for this is like a form of poverty that we just deem unacceptable.
Do you think that should be determined at the local level?
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe the county level.
Absolutely.
Or at least the state level.
The state level.
Yeah, the state.
Bring it back to the states and have them diverse it or distribute it how it's actually needed and will be most useful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think certainly some counties are more prosperous than others, and it's the argument for federalism.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
The argument that we make on the government side or the political side, we're making that on the food distribution side. I think Boerne or Kendall County knows better where the poor people are and what their needs are better than Austin. And Austin knows better about the people in Texas than D.C.
Yeah, I agree. I think in keeping not just the evaluation side of it as local as possible, but also the burden as local as you can, to the point where not to the point where you impoverish a county. So if you did it a county and you had some West Texas county that only had 3 people in it and they're all poor, you couldn't do that at the county level. But I think in our society today, the state level, every state should be capable of taking care of its own poverty needs. I don't think any state's too small to be able to do that. Some counties are, some towns are, but no state should be too small for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, folks, if you like what you hear on the show and you want to get some more of it, Dale and I would like to invite you to Whiskey and Wisdom, a new book club that started late last year, and we meet every other month.
And that would be the 3rd Thursday of June, August, October, and December.
Please join us. We're going to have an assortment of whiskeys there and a great conversation about a very interesting book. Hope to see you there.
Okay, that's it for today. I'm not sure we solved any of the world's problems, but I hope we enlightened a few people. This is the Ceasefire with Dale and Ron, brought to you by the Boerne Bookshop. And if you missed any of that, you can go back and listen to it, to our podcast on BoerneRadio.com. Thank you. Boerne has its own bookshop. In fact, it's called the Boerne Bookshop. Hi, I'm Dale Adams, inviting you to get lost. Get lost in a good book in our relaxed and casual atmosphere. We have a wide and eclectic selection in the Boerne Bookshop, and we pride ourselves on finding what you're looking for. We do author meet and greets, host writing workshops, and can connect you with a good book club. And your young ones will absolutely love our kids section at the Boerne Bookshop. And while we want you to get lost, we're easy to find, as we're in the heart of Boerne at the back of the Richter Tavern building. We are the Boerne Bookshop.